Hi everyone, welcome to this track 2. And the first speaker in this room today will be Rouan Wilsenach. And Rouan is going to be talking about the 4 key attributes of an agile business. So if I can tell you a bit more about Rouan, he's a developer at ThoughtWorks. He has experience consulting for clients in the financial services, health, media and education sectors. He has worked as an agile coach, helping teams learn and adopt agile engineering practices, and has helped businesses with organization-wide agile adoption. So with that, let's welcome Rouan, and thank you.
Good. So step 1 is, can everyone hear me? Yes. People in the back? Yes. Awesome. Okay, so then I don't have to do microphones and things, which makes my life less complicated. So hi, and thanks for coming. I'm Rouan, and I've changed the title of my talk. Can anyone see what I've changed? Right? So I used to say the 4 attributes of an agile business. And then I thought that was a bit presumptuous. Because these things work differently in different contexts. And so what I want to talk about is 4 different things that I've seen in businesses that exhibit the kind of behaviors that we might describe as agile. So the first question that we might ask ourselves is, why do we care about this? And it comes down to the fact that developing software is becoming more and more important to businesses. So what I'm talking about here is that when we talk about agile software development, we're talking about how to do software development well. And why do we care about doing software development well? And the answer to that question, I think, is because it's becoming more and more important to businesses. So for large businesses, their ability to remain competitive is hinging largely on their technology. So we've seen some movements in the banking industry in the last few years in South Africa, where one particular competitor can pull ahead of other competitors based on technology really rapidly and gain market share. It also, for small companies, gives the ability to springboard. So software is a way for small companies to grow quickly and to become competitive with large companies very quickly. And so we've seen some big companies have a lot of trouble because of small startups and their business models. So software needs to be something that we take seriously as a business because it's something that kind of can make or break our business. A lot of revenue for companies is coming through digital channels, and those digital channels are becoming more and more important. In all of their projections, they're kind of looking to the future and seeing, wow, this is something that we need to take hold of and not lose sight of. So that's why I think we should be talking about how to do agile software development right? How to develop software better is the problem that we're trying to solve. And then, so you're the business guy, right? How many people in here are software developers? Okay. And how many people fall on the kind of businessy end of things? Business analysts, or people who own companies, people who run companies, product owners? Okay. So we actually have more developers in the room than we have business people. So you're going to have to take what I'm saying to go and help your business people understand what it is that I'm trying to get across here. So they have a situation where they want to try and write some software, and they have a whole bunch of people knocking on their door saying, Agile all the things, right? They come with books and frameworks and videos and distributed this Agile and scaled that Agile, and all of these different ways and all these different bits and pieces of noise about how you should do Agile software development. And as a business person who doesn't write any code, who's never written any code, and doesn't really understand what software is about, maybe I'm a media executive, or maybe I run a bank, this means very little to me. All I want to do is do this software thing right, so that I can make more money, so that I can make my customers happy. So the question that I'm going to try and answer today is, what are the things, what are the attributes that a business should be displaying in order to be agile, in order to be doing the software development thing right? So that's what I'm going to try and explore with you today. I'm going to try and cut through some of the noise. Cool, let's go. So the first thing I want to talk about is feedback. So this is about being aware. Your business exists not in a vacuum, right? You have customers who use the products or the services that you put out there. And so it's really important that those people are happy with what you're doing. It's important that you're aware of your competitors. It's important that you understand your business model and how that fits into the environment around you. So feedback is about being aware. And what is that awareness about? agility, as a concept outside of software development, refers to how quickly you can react to something, how quickly you can change course. So if I took a cricket ball and I threw it at your face, do you have enough agility to get out of the way in time before it hits you in the face? And so software development agility is very similar. It's about how quickly can we react. But we can go through a lot of trouble making sure that we're really quick to react. But if we don't see the cricket ball in the first place, then we're in a lot of trouble, right? I can have lightning quick reflexes, but if someone throws it at me when I'm not looking, it's still going to hit me in the face. And so feedback is the bit of the puzzle where we try and mitigate that. This is the bit where we try and figure out what is it that we're reacting to. So feedback is about asking the question around you of what is it that I'm trying to react to? What is my environment that I'm trying to work within? So the first point to note here is that if you don't care about feedback, none of this matters. If you have an idea of a product that you're going to build, and you're going to build it in the way that you want to build it, and you're going to put it in front of customers and leave it there, irrespective of what those customers say, then there's not a whole lot of point in actually going through the process of gathering any feedback. If you're not gathering any feedback, you're not going to have anything to respond to, and so all of this agility nonsense is actually doesn't matter to you, right? You might as well go have some coffee, enjoy the next 20 minutes of your life, because the rest of this talk is not going to be relevant. So it's very important to take a step back and think about, do I actually care about feedback? Is it important to me to change what I'm building in the way that makes sense? The customer. How many people of you develop software on a day-to-day basis? Yeah. How many of you get to see customers on a day-to-day basis? Cool. So there are a few hands here, which is awesome. But it's something that we're getting better at in Johannesburg and in South Africa, but it's not something we've got right just yet. So part of this kind of umbrella term of the attribute of being reactive to feedback is knowing your customer, speaking to them, and finding out what they think. This is the person that uses what you put in front of them. And so it's really, really important that they are happy with it. And so we need to ask them. And there are lots of UX techniques that help us ask them what they think and help us get valuable feedback from what they think. But it's really important to always get feedback from your customer early and to do it often. So to keep doing it as we go. It's not the only feedback loop we should be building though. It's very useful to think about other kinds of feedback loops. So there are some qualitative ones, like asking your customer, do you like this? Does this make sense? Does this do what you want it to do? Will you keep paying me for this if it works like this? And there are also some quantitative loops that we can put in place. Things like analytics. If we put a new web page on, how many hits is it getting? If we put a new feature out there, does it increase or decrease our business profitability? Does it make our business more successful or less successful? Does that make it? So some other loops that you can do even here are technical things. How stable is our development environment? How stable is our production environment? We can do some monitoring. And so the thing here, the key word here is helpful. So it's up to you to decide which feedback loops are most useful to you in your context, and to make sure that you set those up and that you pay attention to them as you go. Because it's all of this feedback that's going to help you to be agile, to be able to react to the feedback, right? If you don't know what the feedback is, you can't react to it effectively. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is about having a responsive team. So we want a team that says, yes, we can do that for you. So it's all good and well, we gather all the feedback, but if we don't have people building the software that are actually capable of taking that feedback on board and doing something with it, then we're in a bit of a bind. Then none of that feedback really matters. Here's a shocker. Software is created by people. Right? So this is something that gets forgotten fairly often. And it's something that's really important to remember. You need to have the right team, and they need to have the right support from your organization in order to be able to do the things that they need to do. They need to use some sort of practices that enable change. So it doesn't matter whether this is David's non-ban or whether it's Scrum, could be Kanban, whatever it is, it should allow them to make small changes and to push those through effectively. I should be able to ask this team for something and get something back from them fairly soon. And that's a really useful and powerful thing. The implementation of this doesn't really matter, right? So whether it's one vendor trying to sell you XP and another vendor trying to sell you Scrum and another vendor trying to sell you something else, doesn't really matter which one you're going with, as long as the outcome is that you have a responsive team. Another thing that's really important is close collaboration. So this is something that we've known as a problem in the software industry for a long time, but for some reason we're still trying to figure this one out. How many of you have heard of Conway's Law, or know what Conway's Law is? So Conway's Law states that the software that your organization writes will mirror the structure of that organization. And so very simply what that means is that if you have a fragmented team, you're going to end up with some fragmented software. And so it's really important to get the testers, the developers, the analysts, the business, everyone in the same place so that they can work together effectively. In addition to that, it's important to be close to the business and important to be close to the customer. It's been too long that we've had this kind of divide between the business and IT, right? And this is one of the problems that we've had for ages and we're still kind of trying to figure out how to solve. But it's important to make sure that we do that close collaboration. The days of a software developer being a person who sits in the corner, doesn't talk to anyone, and writes the code on their parts of the code base, those days are gone. Because you can't have a responsive team that operates in that way. People need to talk in order to get stuff done quickly. This is really important. So I've had situations before where I've been speaking to executives or people who run businesses, and they say to me, we need to go to production on X day, do whatever it takes to make that happen. Has anyone ever had someone say something like that to them before? Yeah, okay. Were you actually able to do what it takes to get it live? Did you have the right support? In most cases, the answer to that question is unfortunately no. So if you're running a business and you want to do software right, and you want to have this responsive team, then you need to be able to empower the people that you're talking to, asking to develop software for you. So David was talking yesterday about gravity and about constraints and about the things that weigh you down organizationally. And so really what this is about having an acute awareness of the things that are slowing down your team, the things that are stopping them from being as responsive as they could be to your requests. And so it's really important to try and lift as many of those constraints as you can so that we can enable them. Okay, so before I get on to the next attribute, do you have any questions? I feel like I just want to open this up a little bit because we're about 10 minutes in and I haven't really spoken to anyone yet. I mean, I'm speaking to you, but I'm not really talking. Any questions yet? No? Okay, good. So either I need to be more interesting. Let's try that. Okay, so responsive code. It's ready. Shall we release it? That's the kind of tagline for this one, right? It's all very good and well having a team that's responsive and that can adapt to change and can see, okay, cool, there's a new feature that we need to build, pull it into our process and spit it out for you. But it's not very good if your code base doesn't let you do that. And so what I'm talking about here are agile engineering practices. Your code needs to be an asset. And what I mean by that is that it should be something that actually helps you speed up. It shouldn't be something that slows you down. How many people here would describe their current code base as a liability rather than as an asset? Yeah? Oh, well, that's pretty good. Cool. I think what's really important here is that your ability to make changes to your code, the ability to extend it by adding new features or maintain it by fixing issues that there are, needs to be good. You need to be able to do that quickly because otherwise you're not going to be as responsive as you need to be. So I have a business. I'm paying attention to all the feedback around me. I know what I need to build. I have a team who's able to say, yes, we can do that for you, but then they get to actually writing the code and it's a mess and they take a long time to do it. And so at that point things break down and we can't be as agile as we want to. So there are 3 engineering practices that I want to talk about when it comes to trying to get this right. And it's really important to note that at the heart of all the software development stuff is computer programming. And if we don't do that right, we have trouble, because that's the thing that we're actually busy doing. So one of them is automated testing. And this is all about confidence. I need to have the confidence that my application does what I think it does. I need to know that it does the same stuff that it did yesterday before I added the code that I added today. And the only way to do that is through automated tests. The other ways are very, very painful and very, very slow. So it's really important that we manage this. And basically what this means is that your team needs to be practicing testing in some way, and most likely they need to be doing test-driven development in order to make sure that they have all of the automated tests that give you the confidence to put your code into production. Something else that's really important is emergent design. So what I mean by this is not the kind of upfront design of people sit in meetings and come up with, what are all the different scenarios we can cover and try and cover those. It's more about having an eye for what maintainable software looks like, for what code that is an asset looks like, and to make sure that as we build new things, as the code base grows, that we make the changes necessary to keep it maintainable, to keep it nimble, to keep it agile. And so emergent design is really that art form of knowing when to refactor, how to refactor, and to make sure that things stay in a state where we can make changes quickly. The last engineering practice I want to talk about is about deployment. So nothing matters in terms of the features that you're trying to build until you put it into production. Unless the user is busy using it, it's not adding any value to your life. It's not adding anything to your business's bottom line. And so, when people talk about things being 95% done, that last 5% is very often deployment into production, and that last 5% can very often take longer than anything else. And so it's really important that we get this right, and we are able to put the code into production. If you do it in an automated way, that makes it a lot easier and a lot more reliable, because we want to be able to put our code into production often, right? So if we're getting feedback, we want to be able to show people that we're listening to the feedback and that we're actually paying attention, and that we can put our reaction to that feedback into place as quickly as possible. Any questions on that? Okay. So, the fourth thing that I want to talk about is what I'm calling continuous direction. So what do I mean by this? So I have a business. I understand that developing software is something that should be important to my business. And because it's important, I want to do it well. In order to do it well, I need to understand what it is that I'm meant to be doing, right? And the way that I do it is by building these feedback loops around myself. So I make sure that I'm asking all the questions all the time, that I have the information that I need to use to build the right thing. So that feedback we've got, and then we've got a team that's really responsive and can actually go and build stuff for us. In addition to that, they've got a code base that is easy to make changes to, so that they can actually go and make the technical changes that they need to make as quickly as possible. But if you don't have some sort of way of answering the question of what do we do now, as in what do we do next, then none of the other stuff really matters. So without direction, without the ability to answer the question of what should I be doing now, and so without asking that question all the time, it's very likely that you're going to end up building the wrong thing or focusing on the wrong stuff. So you can start off at the start of a project. Do you remember David yesterday was talking about the kind of planning phase and then a delivery phase, right? So you do a lot of planning, you do a lot of guessing about what it is that you're likely to need to build. You come up with some user journeys, you split those up into user stories, you've got a whole bunch of cards on your wall. You kind of build up a release plan. You say, in September we're going to do these ones, and in October we're going to do those ones, in November we're going to do these ones. But what happens when you go live with some features in September, and you find out that one of the ones that you just kind of wanted to try as an experiment ended up being really popular with your customers, ended up being something that you can make a lot of money off of, or that you can gain a lot of value from. Now you need to be able to throw out some other stuff to do more of that kind of thing. And if you're not able to ask the question of what do we do now, and actually change up your plans, then none of this agility stuff really matters. None of the ability that you've built in your business to quickly make changes reliably actually matter. So I want to talk about an analogy here. So let's talk about housekeeping a little bit. It's a Saturday morning, you're at home, and your house is a bit of a mess. There are some dishes in the sink. There are some dirty socks lying on the couch in the living room. You haven't vacuumed in a week or two, so things are looking a little bit dusty. and the bed upstairs isn't made. You get a phone call saying that your in-laws are coming to visit in half an hour's time, right? Okay. Now you're faced with the problem that every software team in the world is facing all the time, right? And that is that time is a slave to no man. You have half an hour before your in-laws arrive, and no matter what you do, you can't make any more time between now and that half an hour being up. And so you need to figure out what you're going to clean in your house so that you don't disappoint and upset them. And so this is where the kind of prioritization comes in, right? So I only have a limited amount of time. What am I going to do about it? So the dishes in the sink are bad. There are quite a lot of them. And if your mother-in-law sees them, she's going to be quite unhappy. She's going to think you're a slob, right? The vacuuming, not great. There's some dust lying around. But we can probably live with that. They did give us was a kind of a last-minute thing. And so maybe they'd understand this. We didn't actually go through the trouble of vacuuming before they arrived. The bed upstairs, it's okay. They don't normally go into the bedroom. Maybe we can just close the door and not worry about that just yet. So maybe I should start with the dishes. Well, hang on. So there are some socks lying on the couch. They're definitely going to sit down when they come in. So I should probably sort out the socks on the couch first. And so I figure out, great, I've got half an hour. I need to quickly pick up those socks and throw them in a hamper somewhere. Then I can move on to the dishes, wash as many of them as I can. Hopefully I'll get through all of them by the time they arrive. And then maybe I'll wash dishes really quickly and I can do a little bit of vacuuming around the lounge. But now at least I have an idea of what's most important, and I can do that first. And so this is what we call continuous prioritization, right? It's the ability to shuffle things around. And if we can't shuffle things around, then again, we can't do anything with the feedback that we're getting from the people who are using our software or from the monitoring that we put in place. None of it matters if we can't build the right thing, or we can't change direction quickly and build the right thing. And what's really important here is we need to have the ability to make a decision. So someone in your business who's looking after this needs to be able to say, this is what we're doing, and this is what we're doing next. What you're saying to me is valuable, but we'll do that afterwards. And that's something that I've seen in a lot of businesses that really help this whole agility thing, right? Can you actually take the business idea that comes out of your feedback and push it through your pipeline quickly enough? So you can have a responsive team and a responsive code base, but if you don't push it, even if you push it through, even if you can push it through really quickly, if you haven't started the right work, you're in a bit of hot water. Okay, so those are the 4 attributes that I can see or have seen in a few different organizations of being agile and having the ability to react to the environment around them. So 1, it's paying attention to feedback and having the ability to gather that feedback effectively. 2, it's the ability to have a responsive team. So the whole idea here is to have the right people who are empowered, who you help to be able to do what you need them to do. The 3rd thing is having a responsive code base. You need to have the engineering practices in place so that your code is reliable and easy to work with. And lastly, you need to be able to offer continuous direction. Because at the end of the day, what you're building, the software thing you're trying to do well, the only reason you're trying to do it is because it adds value to you or to your customer. And so if you are able to give the direction that helps us figure out what the most value is to you or your customer, then you're able to do that. And then I'd say you could probably call yourself a fairly agile business in the way that you deliver software. Cool. I think we've got just over 5 minutes for some questions. Yes?
Do you have any advice or any experience in terms of where you are one IT shop, but you're in a business where they sell many different products? How do you prioritize those products in terms of everybody's got this need of this needs to go into market now?
Yeah, that's a tough problem, especially in enterprises. Because like you say, you have one IT department with several business departments, and all of those business departments are asking of things. And they're all quite demanding, right? Our new library system needs to go live, and at the same time we need to be able to, full text search all of our books, whatever the 2 things are. So really what this comes down to is bringing the technology, the people who write the software, closer to the business, right? So I think in South Africa we have inherited this legacy structure in IT where we have business, IT management, and the people who build the software, right? And there's kind of this line that sits in between. And I think the way that we try and help this is to give every business an engine room, right? So you're busy trying to build a new library system. Here's your engine room, right? These are the 5 people who can help make this happen. And those are the people who can actually feed into doing whatever it is that you need to do. So I think, Deb yesterday was asking us about when we're trying to solve a problem, do we add things or do we take things away? I'd say in this case it's about taking things away. Yes?
What are some things you've done in IT you're responsible enabling?
Yeah, so that's another good question. So a lot of different things. And it's different in different places, right? So I'm a consultant, so my default response to any question is it depends, right? So it does depend entirely on the team for which you're trying to do it. Some of the things that I find most useful is trying to help teams focus. So a lot of the times teams they have too many balls in the air at a time. And so simple practices like having a list of user stories and working on 1 at a time, or 3 at a time, or however many you can work on at a time, can actually make a really big difference. And what that creates is a decision funnel, right? So instead of there being kind of team X or developer X who gets a whole bunch of requests from a whole bunch of different places and kind of just does whatever the first thing is in their inbox that they haven't forgotten about, you have kind of some sort of structure in place where there's actually a decision that needs to be made about what gets done next. And that's kind of the continuous direction thing. But yeah, it's enabling teams is a topic for a whole other talk. Any other questions?
What point do we become too agile?
Too agile? Geez, that is a problem I would love to have. So part of what's difficult about this concept of agile is that it's become associated with a lot of methodologies and certain kind of structures of doing things. And they all come packaged with a bunch of practices, which can all be practiced to the nth degree. And it's about figuring out what the right kind of leverage mix is for your team and for your organization, so that you know kind of which practices are important and to which degree you want to take them. But that's kind of what I've been trying to achieve with this talk, is to try and talk about, instead of wanting to be agile because there is this framework in which we want to try and work, it's more about my business wants to write software well. What is it that we need to do in order to do that? And so it's whichever degree of these 4 things, and maybe some other things that I haven't thought of, makes sense to you. And one thing that I found really nice about agile adoption in organizations is that generally there are wins along the way. So it's not about kind of, okay, we're going to go on a 3-year journey, and at the end of those 3 years we're going to see some changes. There are small things that you can pick up right at the beginning that can start adding value. And I think that's something that's really useful. Cool. So we've got a few more minutes. Do we have
I think we need to wrap it up because the other session will start on time, so if anyone wants to go to that, we need to keep moving. Thank you very much, Rouan.
Cool. Thank you so much.